So Hamilton 68 is like so many of these other companies. I mean, how do you even describe a company like this? They're staffed. They're founded by former CIA, FBI, NSA, DNI people to go through the news and to decide what is real and what is fake. And so they'll do things like issue warnings, for example, on alternative news sites, consortium news, for example. They'll say, "Oh, this is unreliable. It's they publish Russian propaganda." Well, you know what? They actually don't ever publish Russian propaganda. They were founded by a guy who started with the Los Angeles Times and then spent almost his entire career with the Associated Press. He's the guy that broke the Iran-Contra story. You don't like their position on Ukraine and Russia. That's why you say it's Russian propaganda. Or you don't like their position on Syria because now the CIA is arming Al-Qaeda. We had them change their name from Al-Qaeda in the Levant to the Nusra Front. It's still Al-Qaeda, but it's slightly less radical than ISIS. Like, you know, it's like WWE in that sometimes there's just no good guy.
Right.
You know? So why do we have to pick a side when all three sides are bad? So Hamilton 68 is one of these. It's got like Mike Hayden on it and the former director general of NATO and some former DNI. And it's just...
So these are like very top level officials in these agencies.
Very top level. Mike Morrell. And then what they do, the way they make money, and I think this is scandalous, is they contract out to the government, mostly to the Pentagon and different elements of the Pentagon. And they say, what we'll do is we'll aggregate all the news on the internet, and then we'll put a green check mark or a red check mark next to the URL. So when people at the Pentagon Google an article, what's being said about Ukraine today? Oh, these red check marks pop up. So don't go to Covert Action Magazine.
You're saying like on Twitter when they give you the different, like didn't they give Consortium News a red check saying that it was like Russian state or something?
Twitter wouldn't accept the red check.
Oh, okay.
But Hamilton 68 issued it, and it's on the Hamilton 68 side. And if you're on a government computer, the red check pops up.
Oh, on a government computer.
On a government computer. That's how they make their money.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. So then, listen, if you're an analyst, if you're an intelligence analyst, analysts are always proud to say that they are all source analysts. So you're not just taking CIA source material. You're not taking just NSA intercepts. You're taking everything. Those plus State Department cables, plus they're called DODIRs, their military reporting, and press. Now, I knew as an analyst that I was less likely to find something original and true in a Sri Lankan tabloid than I was in the Wall Street Journal. But now the likes of Hamilton 68 are telling me, no, don't even read that one. That one's no good. We gave it a red check mark. You won't like that. It's propaganda.
But even though these guys are so far removed from these agencies, how tied in are they still? Like, do they still go to the dinners? They still...
Oh, my God, yes. I went to an event at the National Press Club 3 or 4 weeks ago, and Michael Hayden was the host. He and I never got along. I never respected him. He was a torture apologist. We were both supposed to be on the Bill Maher show one time. And we were in the green room, and I called him Mike. And he insisted that I call him General Hayden. And I said, I'm not in the military, Mike. Sorry, I'm not calling you General Hayden. And he got up and walked out. And he skipped the show.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He had a major stroke about a year ago. So at the press club the other night, he got up and he was literally drooling out of his mouth, and he had 2 canes, and this woman wiped his mouth, and he's like, "Thank you for being here, everybody. I just want to say," and then there's this long pregnant pause, Thank you for being here, everybody. And then he sat down. It's like, seriously? You're still rolling him out for these events? And then they're like, we want to tell you about the alternative media. It's dangerous for our democracy and freedom. It's like, you fascists.
The alternative media.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's a funny term. That's another thing that I learned from these Twitter files is how they're able to label these, I don't know what you call them. What are they, like NGOs? Like this,
yeah, pretty much.
This election integrity organization.
Right. Yes.
Like, what is that?
According to whom? Who decides what has integrity and what doesn't?
And if you have any experience in this stuff with like how the government labels, like, for example, the Patriot Act.
Right.
If you look at something like the Election Integrity Project, it's almost like you know what it is.
Yes. Yeah, right. Getting back to Consortium News and Hamilton 68. Hamilton 68 sent a letter to Consortium News saying, we don't like you. We're doing a review of you. And we think we're going to give you a red check mark because you're Kremlin apologists. So you can appeal if you want. So I'm on the board of Consortium News, as are a lot of very serious journalists. I mean, these are Chris Hedges, another 2-time Pulitzer winner from the New York Times. It's a bunch of us on the Andrew Coburn, who we just looked at this article from the Independent. He's on the board. So I said, well, who signed this letter? He said, it's some guy I never heard of. So we Googled him, and it turned out it's this guy in his 20s working for Hamilton 68, and he had worked briefly for a science-related newswire that went bankrupt and shut down a few years ago. He had 3 published articles, and then he went to Hamilton 68. So this kid who knows nothing about anything, he's going to decide that Consortium News gets a red check mark. And not only did they give Consortium the red check mark, but as soon as they did, our PayPal account was permanently suspended. And not only was it permanently suspended, they confiscated the $9,500 that we had in there, and we couldn't meet payroll. So we joined a class action suit in federal court in the 9th District in California with a couple of other publications who also got the red check mark and had their PayPal accounts suspended. And PayPal said, oh, no, we don't want the cost of the litigation. They gave us all our money back. But we can't use PayPal anymore. And we have this red check mark now because the likes of Mike Hayden and this 20-something-year-old kid decided they just didn't like what we were publishing.
Where do you think all of this goes with the social media and with Hamilton 68 and this office in the Pentagon giving people checks on certain websites and all this stuff? And then when you throw Elon into the whole mix, it just gets even more confusing. Like, what is the future of, do you ever think about like what it will look like in 10 years on social media?
Oh, I'm very worried.
Are we going, do you think there will be a reckoning? Do you think the pendulum is swinging more towards openness, like with open algorithms that provide more transparency? Or do you think it's going more totalitarian and censored and more like propaganda based?
There are efforts to push back, but they're very difficult.
So are you, I guess my overarching question is, are you optimistic or are you not optimistic?
I'm pessimistic.
Pessimistic, okay.
But there are some elements of hope.